Good morning, TCR. Good morning. Yeah, I want to thank the leadership of this church, for giving me this opportunity. But today we want to do our service and the sermon a bit differently. We will have, and we've been covering our sermon series on family. And I don't know what comes to mind when you reflect on the three services that we've had so far on family. If you remember, please, as the people on stage help me to set up the seats, tell your neighbor what comes to mind, either from the first service or the first sermon series topic that we took, the second one, and what it was about. Okay? Yeah, I'm just seeing gestures and mouths moving, and I can hear avoiders. Yeah, we've been looking at the sermon series on family. And the first topic we looked at was God's plan for marriage as being a divine plan and God's idea, and as a covenant that the Lord expects us to respond to in that sense. And our expectation is that we should respond in surrender, just like Mary did. We also looked at dysfunctions in family and breaking the dysfunctional family patterns. And last Sunday we looked at family chaos. We're addressing conflict in family. But to assist us dissect this further in a conversation, I want to invite on stage a few people who will help us have this conversation. And the first one is Pastor Dr. Marion. And please appreciate them as they come. For our first-time visitors, she's the wife to Reverend Steve Thuo, and mother to three, Ethan, Hope, and Elvis, a Christian psychologist who specialized in marriage and family therapy. She's a full-time lecturer at USIU Africa. She also runs a business as a director at Farm Hope Psychotherapy and Consultancy. And she also serves in our midst. For those who've been coming to our sermon, who've been coming to our services, she's been covering this sermon series for the last 3 Sundays. She also officially serves in Waridi as the patron. Yeah, I've been told not to leave out that. Please appreciate her as she speaks to us. I'd also want to invite on stage Susan Masharia. Please appreciate her. She's married to Gilbert Masharia, and they have 2 children, Soline and Kenji. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, a public prosecutor with the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution. She serves with us in the area of marriage ministry, and she attends Vision Park E-Group. Please give her a hand of appreciation. I also want to invite on stage Shem Irongo. He's married to Wamoyo Irongo, father to Jasiri, Jelani, and Jabulani. He trusts Jabulani so much. He serves with us in the marriage and family ministry, and he's a marriage and family therapist, also serving in our PMCC. He's and the family ministry, and he's also a director. He's the national director of Youth for Christ. Please give him an appreciation. Last but not least, assist me to appreciate Alvin Bola as he comes on stage. He is married to Shix Otieno, and they have 4 children, Kwendo, Amana, Jelani, and Amalia. He's a development economist, currently managing his business. He's the managing partner of Kileleni Africa Consultants. He serves with us in the marriage ministry and also attends Utawala E-Group. Yours truly, it goes by the name Mike Muremi. I serve in the advisory team and also leading the finance team of this church. I'll also be moderating this service. I'm married to Kezia, and together we are blessed with 3 children, Kayla, Ivan, and Ivy. Give me a hand. Thank you. Yeah, to whom much is given, much belongs to them, and much is expected of them. So welcome, my panelists, and I think I've introduced them, and you know them by now. But I just want to ask, just to take a moment. We've been handling this sermon series of family. What pops out of your mind, especially as you do your work, as you reflect on the messages? What pops out of your mind as one of the things that you can actually touch and pinpoint as a result of this sermon series? Susan.
Yes, what pops out of my mind is the fact that the family is a fundamental unit of the society. So that really captures my mind in the sense that we have to respect that kind of institution. That's my take on that.
Thank you. Pastor Dr. Marion.
Thank you. What comes to mind is how important it is to continuously work on the family relationships. That we cannot imagine that we are okay today and we don't need to work. That we must continuously know the enemies that are surrounding us and continuously work on the family relationship.
Thank you. Shem?
Yes, marriage is God's idea. It's not a human idea. It's not humans who thought, marriage is a good thing. So for us to succeed, then we have to go and use the principles that God has set. And God has set guardrails. And if we are within the guardrails, then we are safe.
Thank you. Alvin?
What comes to mind is that marriage works. I think we have a lot of information out there. And remember, it always seems like bad news sells. So we have a lot of weight put on marriages that are collapsing or not working. But if we put attention onto the guidelines or the manual, which we have especially for us as believers, which is scriptures, then we can be able to navigate marriages perfectly well. Thank you.
Thank you. And as we talk about the conversation of marriage, the starting point is usually not being in marriage itself. Is you started out as a single person who hears about marriage, who reads about marriage, who observes about marriage, and all this has input into how we prepare ourselves for marriage. But Shem, what, as a single person, how can one prepare for marriage in the midst of all that happens around us as we observe, as we read, as we listen, and as we do all this?
Okay, I think one of the things that happens is that people get into marriage and then now that's when they are surprised by so many things. But if we're able to take time and prepare even before you get married, even before you start dating, then you stand a better chance of having a successful marriage. And when you talk about preparing, is first of all getting to know yourself. Are you self-aware? Do you know what makes you tick? What makes you angry? How much do you know yourself? Because when you know yourself, then you're able to be a better person. You're able to know the areas that you need to improve, When it comes to one of the issues that is a big problem in marriage is finances. How do you prepare about finances? Do you know your financial philosophy, of the philosophy of money? What is money to you? Is money everything to you? Because when you come to marriage with the wrong philosophy about money, then it's a recipe for trouble, Emotional regulation is another place where we need to prepare. Because at some point, somebody will make you angry. Hata kama muliombewa na Pastor Steve. But at some point, you get angry. And how do you react to being angered by your spouse? Are you able to regulate your emotions? When we talk about conflict, are you able to learn good ways of managing issues, managing problems, problem solving? Because now those are the things that are going to happen in a marriage. There will be conflicts. How are you going to deal with them? And these are not things that you just get to know when you're married. How you deal with people in the office. Ukiongeleshwa hivi kama you spark, then this is the same way I will react, to my spouse. Then how do I learn to be a good husband, to be a good wife, if I always raise my voice, or get very defensive, then these are the things that we can be able to prepare for. But also getting to know, what does God say about marriage? is marriage just a temporary thing? Is marriage just something that you get into and out? You know, what does God say about marriage? And, you know, Pastor Marion has done a very good work in the series. Then how are you feeding yourself? I remember when we were preparing for marriage, my wife and I, we really listened to many sermons to hear what God was saying about marriage, so that now by the time we go there, we're not perfect, but we had made some strides.
Thank you, Shem. And the other panelists, if you feel prompted to add on to anything that I call one of you to respond to, please feel free to do so. But yes, we've prepared ourselves, we are self-aware, I know my money philosophy, but then I've walked into marriage and I find another human being who has also been preparing on the other end and hearing almost the same issues, but then our takes are different. And when the marriage starts, what pitfalls then can we be able to watch out for, so that as we hope to build a marriage, then these are the pitfalls to avoid? Dr. Mario.
I think as Shema said, even with all the preparation that we might have, we will still experience the challenges that are human in our relationships. And these challenges are based on the relationship itself. These challenges are based on the cultural expectations that we find ourselves, or even the times and seasons that we live. For example, the economic situation right now. If we were never prepared, I think when we were getting ready to get married, one of the pastors kept saying, I cannot have you married if one of you does not have a job. So pitfalls that we must watch out for is that actually we have a stable income or an income somewhere. Because if we do not have an income, we will not eat love. You know, we won't serve love and eat and enjoy ourselves that day. We will need to have something that comes. So we need to watch out that we have money. We have resources that are flowing to keep us alive. Secondly, is we need to watch out our individual patterns, especially of conflict resolution, because conflict will come. And one big one we must avoid is avoiding conflict or avoiding to deal with conflict. Because it is going to be there. What happens is, you know, because of love, we get married and we sugarcoat things. We don't say, I don't like how you cook your eggs, you know, for year one. And then year two, it becomes very hard to even eat them. Year three, you know, there's a problem. And then you say it, and then it looks like, what were you doing all this time? Sometimes it erupts, you know, that have been holding, and I can't hold it anymore. So dealing with conflict and ensuring that conflict, nothing is put under. Also, being able to respect one another and not undermine one another. Again, it's very easy to live with someone for so long and then begin to disrespect them. When you begin to lose the respect, the pursuit of the person that you married, then it becomes a challenge. Let's keep falling in love again. Let's keep ensuring that we don't hold back issues. We deal with conflict as it comes. And the last one is a lack of growth. We need to watch out that we enter marriage and we become stable. We no longer read, we no longer date, we no longer seek to improve each other. You know, Shem was saying how they listened to videos. As we read books, you know, we read books together. And has that continued to be the culture? Have we found ourselves some level of accountability that where we will continue to grow? Because being in a relationship is one thing, but keeping it and ensuring it's healthy and it's growing as its members continue to increase is a pitfall we must watch out for and not relax on it. But also the place of praying together. A lot of us are spiritual alone. And when we get married, that becomes you sort your spirituality and I sort my spirituality. But the place that can create rituals and places where we can connect and get to know one another is that place of praying together. That place of saying, how was your day? You know, for you, for the children. And then we can be able to pray together as we unitedly present these issues and concerns before the Lord. So we can't undermine also our place of spiritual growth, even as couples and even as families together.
Thank you, Dr. Marion, for that. And it's actually insightful. But what is the place of expectations? Is there a place of, I get into marriage, I have a list of expectations on me and my spouse, but they fall short of that expectation? Or an expectation that they were initially meeting, they lax, and that expectation is no longer met. Is there a place of giving up your expectations for the sake of peace? And is there a place of calling out the other person to match up and deliver to your expectation?
I think all those are possibilities. Expectations are good, but if the other person does not know the expectations, then they are useless. So
The expectations of the other person?
my
With
expectations,
the
I
useless.
need to give my husband my expectations.
Okay.
And he needs to give me his, because there's an assumption that you read my mind. We are not mind readers. Everybody needs to say what their expectation is, and then we say, this is what I'm requesting of you to help me, or to meet this particular expectation. But to be very honest, Mike, I think there are two expectations in a marriage that someone can meet. Seriously. One,
I can speak one for the men.
okay, go ahead.
Yes. The one for intimacy.
Exactly. That's one. If your spouse is willing, they can perfectly meet the sexual need or expectation of a person. The second one is the expectation of friendship, because it's on the basis of friendship that care and concern can emanate from, regardless of the seasons of life. So if there is a friendship that when everything else falls, when we are not so intimate and in love with one another, at least we have a default setting to fall back to called friendship. You're my friend. I won't hurt you. I won't harm you with the words from my mouth. I need you to survive. That becomes very, very core. But the rest of the expectation, oh my goodness, it's a gamble. It's a gamble. Financial, it's a gamble. Flowers, it's a gamble. They're important and they need to be spoken about and they need to be communicated. But we need to be able to know that. But also something happens. Marriage has seasons. And there are seasons when the flowers mean so much to me. And please bring the flowers, please. And the chocolates and the cakes. But there is a time when I have a small baby and your presence, your availability, kutumatumwa, is the most important need in my life.
Thank you, Dr. Marion. Nimeona nikikuachilia tutaendelea kuumia.
And Mike, there's something that Dr. Marion alluded to, people avoiding conflict. Because when you get into marriage, you just want things to be rosy, And when you look at Facebook and, the social media, you see everybody just posting happy photos. And you think, this is how a marriage should be. Yeah. But now in reality, you see your needs are not being met. And sometimes even from your personality, you're not a confrontation person. So you just sit back and, hope and probably pray that things are going to change. Alafu as it change. Now, what you need to do is you need to form rituals and habits. And there's one that we learned in PMCC called Dunia Wiki Hii. What that means is that at the end of each week, you sit down and discuss how are things. Where did things go wrong? What could I improve this week? And sometimes you can do a sandwich, good, not very good, and then good. And that way when you serve it to your partner, they are able to now come and now be able to know, oh, by the way, there is this need that I've neglected. Ulikuwa umesahau mambo ya maua. Na the other side unaona there is no sex coming. So you realize, that this is what is happening. And when you have that conversation, it helps you now work on your marriage. So for those of us who are very silent, very avoidant of conflict, when you have those rituals, they help you have a rhythm in your marriage.
Thank you. Thank you, Shem, for that addition. And for record, coriander, aka Dania, can serve as maua and also as a food ingredient. That's from a finance perspective. So that we stay within budget. But speaking to, getting into marriage, Alvin, and sometimes you get married to this person who you're on the same page in terms of faith, in terms of service, in terms of prayer, and one of them, or both, sadly, then starts shifting. The values keep changing, either suddenly or as a very slow fade. Somebody who was given to church and service and of the faith then starts, you start dealing with issues of drug abuse, you start dealing with issues of violence, you start either verbal, physical. So if I get married and all of a sudden or over time the spouse changes and starts wading away from the faith towards cultural issues and the others that I had mentioned, what do I do?
Okay. Am I on mic check?
Yes.
Okay. I think things happen, and sometimes it's a little bit tricky what to do. The first place to begin is to try a sit down and explore discussions around the two of you with regards to mentioning these things which have gone off track and figuring out whether solutions exist. Okay? Sometimes you might not have the ability to solve some of those things by yourself. So you must have important other people around you who can be able to help you solve them. I think one of the things I find which is challenging is that, especially if you have people who've walked ahead of you, who support you in marriage, oftentimes we want to call them mentors. Our problem is that many of us go to mentors when there are problems. The best way to always have that relationship between mentors and mentees is to have an ongoing relationship whereby whether things are good or things are bad, you visit one another, you take each other out for lunch, okay? And caution here is sometimes the mentors are the ones who end up paying. We pay lipanga once in a while, okay? It's not always the case that when we go out or when you come to my place, I'm the one who always sorts you out, because sometimes that becomes a bit of a challenge. We are willing to come down to that level. Hata kama unaishi where you think people cannot be able to access, build that relationship, and that will be able to help you deal with some of those things which are going off track.
Yeah, thank you for that. Susie, marriages start differently. We are experiencing weather that has resulted in the start of many marriages. Where okay, yes, where somebody is asked, sasa kukinyesha hivi unaenda nyumbani aje? Uogopi pneumonia and a marriage starts or a family starts. Okay. Apologies for that. So, in the course of how a marriage starts and then we have a marriage at the end of the day, sometimes there is grounds for seeking legal assistance in the start of the marriage, in handling issues of the marriage, be it child support, be it dissolution of the marriage, because whatever has an end, a start sometimes has an end. And some of them don't even know that the marriage ended. I remain married, but the other party moved on. So where does legal assistance come in, either in the start or in the handling of the issues or in the ending of it thereof?
Yeah, to start with, there is a constitution. That's where we derive our mandate towards any solving of any legal issues. And moving from there, there is also there are avenues in which you can get assistance, especially if there's any sort of form of abuse. You can always first approach an advocate around, or you could even go to a police station. When you get to a police station, there's a gender desk. In most of the police stations, there are gender desks. What do I mean by that? Issues, gender-based violence, they can be dealt on that desk. The same was rolled out back in 2003 and can be very helpful. So that is to say, there are even police officers who are trained specifically to attend to such issues of maybe gender issues, or maybe someone has been assaulted by their husband, someone has been sexually assaulted, a child or an adult. It happens a lot, and we hear of these cases. So the best thing is to get to a police station, report, and then don't fear. It's important that one does not shy from reporting such incidences. There are also hotlines everywhere, like FIDA hotlines. You're able to call FIDA and inform them of whatever issues that you're having. If it is violence, then they are usually counselors, they are lawyers who can assist you in that respect. Then we also have NGOs, non-governmental organizations that like CREW, that help in those in issues regarding gender-based violence, or if it is custody, or if it is issue of maintenance, that can be dealt with in such spaces. So all I'm saying is that we should not shy. Even in church, you find that the pastor knows somebody or knows an advocate who can help you out, and that is how we get assisted in those avenues.
Yeah, thank you, Susie. I think what's running through my mind, I've never seen two people intending to get married go to a police station, say to the gender desk, to report that they desire to get into marriage. So those that start on the cohabitation level, at what point does it become marriage? At what point is it even recognized as marriage? Is it at the arrival of the other guests? At what point is it construed as marriage?
A marriage, as defined under the Marriage Act, but the same derives its authority from the Constitution, Article 45 of the Constitution. It's a union between two people who have consented, two people, and those are adults, not children. So to that extent, and these two people are not a man and a man, or a woman and a woman. It's a man and a woman. So to that extent, if you are an adult, you've consented to this kind of union, then you can have a marriage.
Thank you, Susie. Alvin, just to bring you into this conversation, I know you serve in the marriage ministry, and there are some marriages that have been accidentally started. So it was an encounter or two, children came into the picture, there is expectation that I am now married. Is that construed as marriage?
I never saw that happening. I'm not so sure whether this thing called accidental is actually accidental, because I think the process of getting those visitors, it's processed, it's premeditated, it's planned and executed. Okay. I think what happens after that is very critical with regards to, do you go to formalize or do you go your separate ways? Sometimes there are questions of people who come together because now the new visitor has come. There's a big issue with that because you need to come, sit down and have a deeper conversation on some of these issues which make marriage work or not work. But if you jump into it because there's a new visitor who has come in, then 3, 4, 5 years down the line, we start having other issues altogether. And therefore, my thinking is that there's no accident. Really, boy doesn't meet girl on the street and then they take a corner and a guest appears. Okay? Boy premeditates, girl premeditates. By the time your zip and your belt is coming down, it's a process. I think that's why we are human beings from the scriptures, we are created in God's image. We are different from animals. We need to be able to be strong to make informed choices and decisions. So I won't answer on the other side. I want to answer it on this other side. That for me, life rotates around two things: choices and decisions. You make a decision and you choose to. Then now you deal with the consequence. Okay? So if it's marriage, then I think from a legal perspective, I think she's been able to give us detail of that. There are those who now go the customary way, but it has to be informed by facts, and you have to interrogate a lot of things between the two of you before you jump into it.
Thank you, Alvin. Any other addition?
Yeah, and also just to ensure that the same is formalized, there has to be a certificate to that effect, depending on the marriage that we are talking about. So if it is a Christian marriage, then for any marriage, because there are several marriages, there has to be a certificate from the registrar of marriages. That is to evidence that actually the two of you are married under the law.
Thank you. So my viewers, you have heard it is not accidental. It is premeditated. And then you have to deal with the consequences of your choices and actions. Shem, one of the pitfalls that Dr. Marion called out to watch out for is the lack of some form of income for both parties who want to get into a marriage setup. And in pursuit of work, sometimes you find that both or one of them is working far off in another county or country or even continent, and there is start of long-distance relationship from the point of dating and even in marriage. What's your view about people working in two locations which are long-distant apart from each other? And what are some of the challenges that come about as a result of that, and how do you navigate it?
Okay, this is a reality of our time. But this is not one of the reasons why people get into marriages for companionship. And companionship is hard to achieve when there is distance, you know. That's a reality. You know, it's you want to have a partner who you're doing life with. You know, somebody who you're able to share good moments with. But it's very hard to achieve that when you have a long-distance relationship. However, it happens that sometime maybe the person who you love is on the other side of the globe, or you love them but they are here and there is no work here, and you know, you look for greener pastures, and that happens. So when you find yourself in such a situation, it's not an ideal situation for any relationship. You'll go through tougher seasons, tougher times than those who are together. So one, there will be an issue of unmet needs. We've talked about needs. There will be unmet needs that come with that. Secondly, there may be trust issues. You know, what is this person doing? Where are they? You know, how are they meeting their needs that which I'm not able to meet because of distance? You start asking yourself such questions. Then, you know, if there are children in that case, then the parent who is left with the children, they bear much more weight, which is not able, you know, in a place where you are the two of you'll distribute. There's somebody to run around, oktumatuma, you know. But now you find that you're just the one who is there. So it's not an ideal situation. However, when it happens, first of all, you need to ask yourself, for how long is this person going to be away? Will they going to be away open-endedly, or you set aside a certain amount of time? And sometimes these things are good to discuss even before it happens. My wife and I, we have discussed and said, you know, if you are going to a place for more than 6 months, then you expect me to join you there. You know, that is non-negotiable. We will, you know, adjust to live in one budget. And I've also seen people who have moved, even in our congregation, insist that the employer who is taking them to also take care of their family members. You know, that I'm not coming alone. I'm coming with my family. And I've lived in a non-family station before I was married, and I could see the troubles that come with that. So insist. It's something that you are able to do. Insist. If you're taking me, I don't come alone. I come as a package. Is this something that you can be able to talk with your employer during the hiring process? But also now, when they are away, you've discussed it is maybe 3 months that they will be away. How then do you keep the communication going? Are you able to have, virtual meetings, virtual dates? Are you able to continue just being able to be in each other's life, update each other in where you are at that particular time, emotionally, financially, and also now see that the time that you had sought to be away, that you've actually, when that time comes, that person comes back home.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Can I just rejoin that to that? We experienced that ourselves in our second year of marriage, where my wife had to be transferred out of town into Nakuru because funding on one side had ended and new funding had been allocated in Nakuru. So that was a funding for Rift Valley. But ideally, Rift Valley begins from Ngong and ends up in those other places. So originally, the office actually was supposed to be in Ngong, but they had to be moved to Nakuru. So there are things we did, and I think alluding to some of the things which Shem has mentioned. One, where is God? Do we operate on our own intellect and abilities and believe that we are the only ones who can be able to provide? Where is God in all this? So we had to trust God that she will go to Nakuru. The joy of it is that she would go to Nakuru on Monday. I'll drop her to town on Monday. And Tuesday she'll be back because she's working in Ngong. So the rest of the week, she was always around. But after 1 month, what he said is, you need to give yourself a time frame and trust God and talk to God and say, if this is not happening, because marriage is your idea. Remember the vows when you talk about the oneness. Marriage is your idea. We are stopping this job and trusting you for another job. And that's what we did. And in a month's time, she was in a different job. Okay? So she came back to Nairobi. The challenge of making that the norm. Okay? I was blamed because I never visited the house in Nakuru. I have no clue where that house is up to today. Okay? The challenge is you start disconnecting physically. Okay? So the life of the other person goes on independently of your life. So when you come back after 2 months, 3 months, like our friends who work in Uganda, their life moves on, your life moves on. Okay? After you've disconnected physically, you disconnect emotionally. Okay? By the time you are done with your many years of working, if that is the norm, and the nest is empty, you become strangers. You start wondering what happens. That's when she moves to take care of the Wajuku, especially the men. We suffer in silence to nurture home because we disconnected completely because of those decisions which we made. Thank you.
Yeah, just a rejoinder. I would say that I also went through the same scenario where I was working in Kisii and family was here. I would say that it was very challenging because it was at we had just gotten married. So I was just going with a 2-month-old baby, and I don't even know how to handle this baby, and I'm in a new job and I'm having to do all this. So it was quite challenging to an extent that I felt like, if this is what marriage is, I think now you're having to deal with so much at a go alone. So there comes the issue of how you want to bring up the children together. There's no one to help me run around with a few things. So it was really difficult, but maybe the one aspect that I knew that would come forward was that aspect of when would I come over. But since it was a new job, I was just thinking, okay, let me just try. So we never knew quite clearly, but we knew maybe in due time because I was in the process of doing letters and all. But it took more time than we even imagined. So what I would say is it was really keeping me from doing a lot of things. I'm not able to serve. I'm not able to do what. He's here. He has to keep traveling. It was just not making a lot of sense. But one thing I say is that next time we will reconsider that decision of if they have to take me elsewhere. I think I'll now this time I'll be like, no, I think for this purpose let me just stick around and be able to go on with the building the family as the two of us, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what I'm also getting from that is, if it is not a matter of survival, that we are separate, then it's to, as much as possible, work in the same location. And even if you're working in different locations, following the risks that Alvin has brought out, physical separation, emotional separation, and the others, because there is the risk of, eventually, when you're in another location and I'm in this location, another Bluetooth device connecting. And when it connects, successfully connected. And when it does that, then it brings in the issue that I'm going to next, where we are talking about blended families, step arrangement, where, as I said, marriages start differently. There is somebody who comes alone. There is another one who comes with what they've also gotten from the society. They want to step into marriage with that for various reasons. Loss of spouse, expeditions, and the like. But what is the obligation? What is the legal obligation of a parent in a step arrangement or a blended family arrangement or even adoption? Susie.
Article 53 of the Constitution provides that parental responsibility is for both parents, that is, the father and the mother, equal responsibility. So to that extent, whether you're a stepfather, actually, the Constitution does not really discriminate. Actually, it doesn't discriminate. It doesn't say parental responsibility of biological children. It provides for parental responsibility of children. So there's no discrimination. To that extent, it means if you're a stepfather or you're a stepmother, you're supposed to take up that responsibility as per the Constitution, and it should be equal. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity.
The same is also buttressed by the Children Act 2022, which also states that it does not matter whether they are biological or not. It is just for children. So long as you're in that family and you assume that role as a parent, yeah, whether they are yours or for the other person who is not within there, you take full responsibility.
Yeah. Actually, Mike, there was a court judgment like 2 weeks ago where after divorce, a person who had adopted the children of the other partner was asked by the court to continue paying child support even when the children were not biological. So even as we are getting to relationships, we need to know that this is what you're getting into and just be prepared for that.
I think our law is also becoming very protective of the children in relationships, and addressing the matter of adoption is that there is a new expectation that if parents choose to adopt children, their relatives commit to be family members of those children. Yeah, if your brother, Madanga, is adopting a child, you become an uncle and you sign up, you accept as family the responsibility. Because we've had a tradition where people say, oh, this child was adopted from Kisii, and us, we are Merus. So we do not associate with that. And when somebody or the parents die, it becomes a big problem. This child is sent away back to the streets. But we are saying as long as a child has come to a home, that child belongs to that home, including the ancestral relationships.
Wow, that is enlightening. And you know, your example of Meru and Kisii, that combination. In the interest of time, and you know, when lawyers read from piece of legislation, be it the Constitution or the Acts, each of them says that the law is very clear, yet they are contending against each other reading the same piece. I think that's a question for next time. But Dr. Marion, we have seen mental health become a topical issue that we are having to deal with in our families. And some of these are personal disorders, some of these are mental illness issues, PTSD, schizophrenia, OCD, and the like. And how do we deal with them, especially if I'm a supportive spouse that I'm expected to be, of somebody who is depicting those kind of illnesses and personal disorders? And what is the place of the person themselves who are handling such issues?
I think the first place to begin, Mike, is to be able to say that mental illnesses are illnesses like any other. It's like having diabetes. It's like having blood pressure. It's like having arthritis. When we walk through life and experience life challenges, we need to be able to realize it's part of the package of the vows we gave and said, for better, for worse, in sickness and in health. If you develop depression, it's the same as if you develop blood pressure. You don't walk out of a marriage situation because someone developed blood pressure or someone is suffering malaria. I think our greatest challenge is asking ourselves, how do mental illnesses develop? Mental illnesses have two big, large aspects of how they develop. One of them is biological. And we can go back to what we talked about, drawing a family tree or a genogram, and be able to say our family line is susceptible to depression. My mother suffered depression. You know, another person's parents suffered something else. And therefore, we know we are susceptible to that kind biologically or by heredity. But secondly, we know that when pressures of life push us, for example, unresolved grief in 3 months will be depression. So if you have grief and you don't want to deal with it, or if you are a first responder, you're a police, you're in the army, you're an ambulance operator, you're a first respondent.
Or a pastor.
Yeah, or a pastor, by the way. Know that post-traumatic stress is a probability in your life. Okay? Because you respond to a lot of deaths, you respond to a lot of people who are broken. So having structures in your life to be able to deal with that. Because if you don't deal with it, then it will become post-traumatic stress. So you can't be able to say, I'll marry this human being, and they will not have stressful situations. You losing a job, and you don't deal with it, you start using substance. Guess what? You'll have a substance abuse, and you will also have depression or bipolar. Because you're refusing to deal with life situations. So we need to realize that these situations actually are not for our own doing. And therefore, the first thing that who actually has the disorder or has the problem, or the spouse, all the family need to know is understand the sickness. Understand what this person is suffering from. Because a lot of us do not understand. So because you do not understand, then you find yourself, you're in a problem. Number 2 is seek help. These are medical problems, not bewitching. It is a problem. And the problem is solved in a hospital. There is no one who is shamed for going to be treated for malaria. So let's stop shaming people for going to be treated for mental illnesses. Because we need them to be okay. No, I will answer the question before you ask. Medicine does not make people worse. If a medicine has side effects, let's go back to the psychiatrist. Let's have the medicine changed. And let's have full treatment. Let's have pharmacology, the treatment of medicine, but also let's have psychological support. And that leads us to the other aspects. Let's have group support, social support. There are groups where we talk about how to live with spouses who are depressed, how to live with people living with bipolar. So we have support groups that actually come together and are able to talk about how to live with people that have these disorders. Now, the greatest disorder that we have a problem with is the personality disorders. Personality disorders are not medicated, but they are also very easy to miss. And there are 3 big ones that we have been talking about everywhere. One is narcissistic personality disorder. The second one is antisocial. And the third one is codependent. These are personality disorders that we experience as we deal with people. And especially the narcissistic is very hard to deal with. If you add drug addiction and substance use together, it becomes very hard to treat. However, it is treatable. Therefore, it's important for us to be able, when our friends and people we work with and our spouses bring up an issue, And a big factor in all these personality disorders is lack of empathy. When we don't feel people, we can't identify with people's emotions. You know, I don't want to deal with your heart, then you have a high risk or percentage that you're probably dealing with a personality disorder. And you need help to be able to be supported to live with people.
Thanks, Dr. Marion. But as you say that, you know, there are people who are antisocial and regarded as antisocial, and they regard themselves as introverts. Maybe as you respond to that, there are also those, especially under this tent, that regard mental illnesses and personality disorders as demonic oppressions, and therefore having a spiritual angle to the point of families parting ways. So is it a demonic oppression? Is it a clinical issue? And so how do we deal with it?
One of the views from my training I've been taught to have is a wider scope of life. Because sicknesses come in very different perspectives. And one of the things that we know is that actually mental illness is a clinical issue. It's a sickness. It's a health perspective. But I've also lived and worked in ministry in a while, and I've discovered that some things are also spiritual. And one of the things we say is that we need to apply all things on board, all possible means for treatment. So if it is a spiritual aspect, yes, let's go for prayer. But also, let's go for medication. And also, let's go for psychotherapy. We do the same in all other sicknesses. We come here and are prayed for. But then the person still goes for surgery. Isn't it? So it's being able to say, whatever this is, we will attack it from all angles. We'll pray about it. We will ask for deliverance, if it is deliverance. But we'll also take you to the hospital, and we'll also take you for psychological help. About antisocial personality disorder, these disorders are actually, you can be able to read them very easily online. But for example, the antisocial personality disorder is where somebody actually openly abuses people or violates people's rights. I remember at some point being in a situation in a practicum site that was a rehab, an addiction rehab. And I realized having someone who was in that place because they had an antisocial personality disorder and they were actually breaking the law. So they were also running away from the law even as they were coming for treatment. And that's where you find someone is always on the other side of the law. For example, abuse. Abuse is criminal. That's what Susan should tell us. It's actually a criminal offense. It's not a domestic dispute. It's a criminal offense. So if someone is perpetually abusing another person and don't realize, they will minimize, and there is a cycle of abuse that we talk about in domestic violence. They will minimize issues. They tell you, oh, it was your fault. Now, the abuse becomes your fault, and you're the one who begins to apologize. We talk about people who are mean to animals. That begins to show that actually you have no sense of empathy.
Animals.
Yeah.
Talking about family. Anyway, thank you, Dr. Marion, for that perspective. And Susie, you know, some things that can crop up out of such kind of sicknesses and personality disorders are actually what we would call conflicts arising from injustice and criminal activities. For example, incest by a parent, a father or a mother. And that becomes something that you have to address, first of all, as a conflict and in seeking for justice. So how should we handle such kind of conflict that has an implication in terms of justice and the criminal aspect?
It's just to report. Just let someone know that this is happening. And it being a criminal offense, you report to the police station. Oftentimes, like Pastor Marion was saying, some of these conflicts come to our attention, and by the time I'm able to get the charge sheet, what I see is it's the charge that is being preferred is that of assault, just assault, under the penal code, which is a misdemeanor or a minor offense. But when you look at the facts therein, that's when you realize, this is gender-based violence. It's not the normal. It's not that just assault, alinichapa, nikaenda police station, no. So to that extent, we've been trained in a certain way to ensure that we are actually seeking other options of ensuring that the person who is reporting is safe. Because they are usually safe houses for those that are reporting. At the gender desk, at the police station, when you go report, let them not dismiss you and tell you, ya wewe sasa unasema nini, unachapo aje na bibi yako, mzee kuwa serious, you know. No, it is important. It is, the men are actually suffering in those avenues where that is happening, na afu wanaambiwa, ukue serious, ukue ujikaze kama mwanaume. Hakuna kujikaza, hapa utakufa. So at the end of the day, it is important that if attention is not being given at the police station, address it to their senior. The senior, is it the OCS or whoever it is that is a senior at that point? Or on the alternative, once that charge is brought to the office of the DPP, where in this case I stand, we trust that the council that will be dealing with it will be able to address those issues, because we label them as gender-based violence and should be treated not like the rest, because even the charging, the section that prefers the charges should be different. The other one is under the Penal Code, the other one should be under the Domestic Violence Act 2015. So clearly, the other one is, the one under the Domestic Violence Act is quite stringent. It's not hivi. Ingine mutachapana, I don't know wasameane. The next thing we hear is that actually death occurred. Because they come, we know, at that point wanawekana ndani, lakini eventually as I'm waiting for hearing, I hear, oh, they want to reconcile. I'm okay. I'm like, okay, they want to reconcile. But of course we ask them a few questions before we do that. Then after some time, you hear that, you remember the couple that was here? No, it's a gone case altogether. So we are dealing with that on our desk to ensure that we are not just letting it go like that, but looking at the specific section that protects the parties or the party who's been aggrieved, to not just let it go like that. Ati wanasameheana. We have no issues with kusameheana, but it is very grave when eventually sasa it will be a gone case.
Yeah, thank you, Susie. And I think the other thing that I also pick from that is, over and above just seeking justice, there is a space for emotional healing, as Dr. Mariano was speaking to it, and even physical healing, going to hospital and verifying that as a result of abuse, as a result of violence, that you are fine.
Mike, I want to go back to the issue of children. Child abuse is becoming very prevalent, especially among our community. And it's coming from the premise that we own children. Because I gave birth to this child, they are my property. Actually, every child is the property of the government. That is why they are registered. And actually, from the Constitution, every child should be registered. Every child born in this country should be registered. And therefore, when you hurt the child, you're actually not dealing with the biological mother, you're actually hurting the government. And I know one of the greatest challenges for us is to imagine that this is the caregiver, but also hurting children. One of the things we have discovered, these things we call ACEs, advanced childhood experiences, are becoming the cause of mental illnesses in adulthood. And therefore, failure to acknowledge a sexual abuse and an incest and deal with it with all seriousness is leading us to a lot of mental disorders and suicides when people are already in their adulthood. And therefore, we need to be a culture that refuses impunity where sexual abuse and childhood abuse is concerned. If you're a neighbor, a child has told you, if you're a teacher, for us as marriage therapists, our ethical code calls us to be advocates. So you report to me that a child has been abused, I will actually begin the process of report. Because if I am not going to do that, I will be negligent. I'll be actually a person who is not doing what their professional aspect is supposed to be. And sometimes we are going to the children offices to the extent where even the children now need to go to the children's home or to places that are safe because of that. And Shem, you guys are dealing with issues of sexual assault or sexual or incest that lead to pregnancies. And now they become your problem. Because the society, the church itself, has refused even to address and to bring up and say, this is incest. And because many mothers who are probably married in a second marriage with a girl child who is from another marriage, you shush the child. And because you are financially interested, but what you're doing is that you're actually setting up that child against themselves and against you for the rest of their lives.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that perspective. Alvin, money has become a big issue, shifting gears a bit. And it's become the source, as the Bible says, the love of it becomes the root of many evils, and we've pierced ourselves with many griefs. But you've seen trends and even practices in the society where an account is loosely translated to say, I'd rather die than disclose account because this is my money and not our money, or we live on your money as I save my money. What are what's some of the wisdom we can borrow and live on as we relate on financial matters for the health of our families?
Okay, thank you, Mike. First and foremost, what you own is what you've saved. So that means, therefore, that the first place to begin is to have both long-term and short-term vision. Once you've been able to define that as a couple, then you always go back to annually have a budget for your incomes, which now dictate your expenditures. I think the challenge we have is that we talk a lot about increasing our incomes, but we never have a conversation about managing our expenditures. So sometimes the questions asked about finances are not necessarily an income question. It's usually an expenditure question. Because the lives we live are about comparisons and competition. So because you're competing with the person next door and you have no clue where they get their money from, or because they post very interesting things online and you want to also belong to that specific category, you push your expenditures to the extent that your incomes cannot be able to manage. So the most critical thing which I always say is that if you have two incomes, please try to live on one income. And COVID has taught us that. Because people went into 50% of their incomes or no income at all. And there was hue and cry. If there was a time when there was a lot of challenges in marriages, was the COVID period. And a big portion of it was financial. So start by defining, sometimes which is also a difficult thing, how much is enough? Okay? We never have that discussion. Or when we reach here, we've arrived. Everything else that we get now, we give out. But we keep on pushing and searching and pushing and searching. Then the budgets needs a lot of conversation annually. What we try to do ourselves is we have an annual, so to speak, business meeting where we review our finances and reallocate for the next year. And that budget should be able to include everything so that this thing of my money, your money doesn't arise. Kama ni pesa ya nywele, iko kwa budget. Kama ni pesa ya I'm going to hang out with my boys, it's within the budget. If it's you going to hang out with your girls, it's within the budget. So everything must be built and included within that specific budget. And if your monies can't get married, then there is a problem. Because you can't keep some money on the side saying that this is my money, this is your money, and we'll be able to deal with it. When we got married, we tried to do a joint account. Many years later, we've never used that joint account. Because we discovered that the trick is not in the joint account. The trick is in the budget. So do you have a budget? Do you follow through that budget? Do you review that budget? Does the budget include everything, including the amounts of money you use to service and address issues of our parents, okay? For us, our parents are our responsibility. Our other relatives, we may or may not, but we still allocate resources. Once that resource runs out, then we know that it has run out. But also go back to yourselves internally and try to find out whether you're living for others or you're living for yourself. So that's where I can be able to live.
Well, thank you, Alvin. And as we bring this to a close, you see, when you say hanging out,
I want to step into that because Alvin meets the people who are doing well and are whole. I meet the ones who are fighting.
okay.
On the
Now,
other
are
hand.
they the ones that hang out with the boys?
I'm not sure. Actually, they don't tell us that, but they come to the end where the money is not, this arrangement is not working. Whether one is misusing the money and is gambling, is doing alcohol, is doing drugs, is sleeping all day because probably they have a mental illness that has never been addressed. So there is one person donking to make the money. And that becomes important now to be able to ask ourselves, if one person is making the resources, and this has been said in many homes, then we divide the roles. And I don't care where you get school fees, I don't care where you get, because if you can't wake up and take yourself to work and make the money, then I am also not going to sit at this end and give you a reason to spend it. So I think when things are working, we are able to do that. When things are not working, I think we are also able to make some serious help-seeking avenues. First and foremost, if you have someone who's not having a job and they are not waking up to try, maybe you have a depressed person, it is important to speak up and say, we are in trouble. This is not working. If we have people who, you gave us the financial personality. If I'm just a splurger, me, I just use the money. I just spend it, and I don't make it. It's a place to calm down and talk. If we cannot be able to talk, instead of us later finding out we are in so much debt, it is important that someone puts a break on that and be able to say, because we are not able to work with our monies together, then we are going to divide and we are going to work in a way that is going to be more functional, so that some aspects of the family continue to move. Otherwise, we might find ourselves being auctioned. I have seen that, because there is irresponsibility on one spouse in spending it or in actually not making it.
Well, thank you for that addition. And now that the men who worked on the remains of Nanaza and Safira have taken the stage, it is a cue that we should also bring this to a close. Yeah, so I think the last question, Shem, as we bring this to a close, also being one that deals with people who are broken. I'm sure that there are some observable traits and attitudes and values that especially the younger generation are taking on that are eventually harmful in the space of marriage. Very briefly, maybe you could point out that. Then we can take the last round of thoughts as we close.
Pneumonia. I think one of the things that is happening is when unrealistic expectation. I think that's one of the things that's plaguing marriages. Because when people get married, they are like, this is what you expect from this other person. You're like expecting things to change overnight, or you're expecting them to meet all your needs. I think the posture that we should be taking when you get into marriage is the posture of giving, not the posture of taking or getting. And if you change that posture, I think you'll have dealt with most of the issues in marriage. Because when you get into a marriage, even when you look at the list, somebody who will do this, somebody will do this, somebody with this job. And it is all about you, or all about me. But when it is, when you get into a marriage so that now you're able to give to the other person, you're able to love on the other person, then you get into a better place. You see, when we are in the place where we're only getting what Pastor Marion said, we get to a place where we want to 50-50. Like you do this, I do this. But are you able to get into a marriage to love the whole way, to go the whole way? Not to be abused, but to go the whole way. Do you love this person wholly, unconditionally? So I think those are some of the things that we see, Mike, that are plaguing relationship. And now what also Alvin said, comparisons. You know, we are chasing the Kemanis without knowing where the money is coming from. So are we able to continue just having your vision as a family? That when their neighbors buy another car, that's not a cue for us to buy another car, but just saying this is our vision. You know, one of the things I see with young couples, whenever they get married, they say, you know, when you get married, you cannot be married and be carless, you know. Yet there is no money to support that lifestyle. So let's have our own vision as a couple and say this is how we are going to pace ourselves for us to get where we want to be.
Thank you very much. So I'll give each of you at most 3 sentences, not 3 minutes, 3 sentences for your parting shots and what we should basically take away as we bring this to a close. Alvin, as we come this way.
Okay, to the married couples, please, I know there are people who the last time they went out was on their honeymoon. Take each other out. It's good for the heart, it's good for your life. Because then it's an opportunity to always arrest things before they become big things. So take each other out. It doesn't need to be expensive. And you can develop, I think we talked about earlier, Pastor Madan talked about rituals and Shem also. Develop also rituals which allow you to connect together. Then find things which both of you enjoy and continuously do them. Like, for example, serving together in a church context, not necessarily in the same ministry, but serving together so that you are also in that oneness. Thank you.
3 sentences.
I'm taking this opportunity to talk about PMCC. And what we do in PMCC is to help you make an informed decision as to whether or not you should get married to this person. The purpose is not for us to get you to Pastor Steve so that you get married. It is to help you make a decision, an informed decision. So if you're there and you have somebody who you want to make them your permanent, please, before you make that decision, come to the class so that we can help you in that process, and you're not going to regret. So the purpose of PMCC is not that each and every person gets married. It's that each and every person gets out knowing and having made the right decision.
Thank you. And Pastor Marin, as you take that to make your final remark, there are many of us that present a Christian posture out there in the public, but whatever is on the ground can only be unearthed in a police station.
I'm learning a lot, and one revolutionary book of my Christian walk I have landed to is called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. Emotionally healthy spirituality. Because you cannot be emotionally unhealthy and be spiritual and grow in your spiritual walk. So one of the things that we need to know is that there are steps to the Christian faith. 1 is your encounter to Christ. 2 is your discipleship. 3 is your service. And 4th is your inner work. A lot of us haven't reached there. A lot of us haven't reached there where you need to deal with your childhood issues. A lot of us haven't reached to the place where your lustful desires of what you do on Saturday and Friday night have not been addressed by Jesus. So that is where the problem is. That huku nje we have been shaped by Jesus, we dress like we know Jesus, but the inner self has not been touched. And the inner self cannot be touched by just praying. It needs to be touched by an awareness of how bad I am inside, how broken I am inside, and going out and saying, I struggle with masturbation, and I am looking for help. Not looking for people who will agree with me that masturbation is a key thing for those of us who are struggling in this way. So we have a support group that keeps us in that aspect. So the fact that I am being abusive to my husband is the fact that outside I have encountered Christ. I am trying to do and become a Christian. I am serving, but the inner work has not begun.
Thank you very much. Susie?
Family is me and you. Family, if it doesn't work, the society goes down. Now, in an instance where there are issues, tusikimie, tuongee, and that way we resolve some of the issues that are coming up later in life. And most importantly, let's also remember those children that we have. Those ones, we are the adults, we are the only ones who can protect them. So therefore, let's not hide things that can actually affect them in the future. Now, if you have issues at your family level, and you've always thought that since the other person went to the US, and now, no, your spouse went to the US, now you're here, you still feel like there's a marriage. It is 4 years down the road. Don't lie to yourself, yeah? Communication cut off on the first year after he relocated or she relocated. Don't lie to yourself. That is an element of dissolution of that marriage. So therefore it's desertion. So at the point when it's 3 years down the road, you don't talk, you don't do what, you have an option. Just get a service of an advocate, see how that can be dealt with, because I don't think you're having a relationship.
Thank you very much. Please give them a hand as they take their seats. It was good having you and holding the conversation, even as I invite Reverend Steve on stage to just wind up the service. And that was a good. Please give them a hand as they sit. Thank you.
Why don't we appreciate them one more time? I don't know what words you have learned today. I have picked up 4 of them. Discordant, buttressing, hiyo nitakuja niulize hiyo ni nini. Incoherent, misdemeanor. Was that helpful? I've been given a lot of information while this has been happening, so just buttress yourselves for more, so that we as a church, we are not discordant in what we are doing. We are coherent as we deal with every manner of misdemeanor. TCR, it's time to give. Unajua, na suspect kuna watu walikuwa nafikiria nimesahau, but you forget the pastoral end. We cannot forget these things. And so I want to ask you to prepare your offering. I am going to ask us to give. Those who are giving physically, I'm going to invite you to stand up and walk over to our ushers as they stand. Those who are giving via M-Pesa, the pay bill is coming up on the screen. If you're giving via check, if you're giving via any other means, the details are coming to us shortly. Please feel anger free. This is your time to rise up, to give, to do what is necessary. I'm going to pray at the end of that as I remind us of. By the way, sorry, Mike, thank you so much. You have moderated very, very well. I'm thinking that you need to develop this as a side hustle, but we will talk after. You actually literally use the laptop as it should be used. You put it on top of your lap. I appreciate you, my brother. As we do that, allow me to remind us of VBS. It starts tomorrow. We can get as many details for those of us who want to do that right at the desk. Visitors who are visiting with us for the first time, after the service, kindly meet us at Sebuleni towards our left. Allow us to manage your budget today for what you could have gone out there and eaten. Let me also remind us of Activate for Impact, the conference that is happening on Tuesday. You can register online. You can find it on our socials. But also at the desk at the back, we are going to have that registration happening for us. Ashas musiende mpaka niombe. Sawa. All right. We can do that, and remember that this coming Saturday is a day of evangelism and prayer. Now, I want to point out two quick things before I pray in regards to our giving. The set that has been put up, Meipenda. In fact, nimeona nimekuwa nikikalia kiti ngumu as a man of God. Nimetembea makanisa zingine. And I'm starting to think, anyway, this set has been provided to us by Forever Finds. The details are going to be put on the screen. They're already on the screen. They offered to, if you're doing a conversation, then let us change how it is that we are seated. The details are there. You can take a picture of the details so that you can be able, in case you're looking for furniture, I know they have fixed some things in our house. You can always contact them. And they gave this as a gift to us for the service today. Why don't we appreciate them for that for us? We have, you might have noticed that we have dealt, vitu za ground, we will talk about them. But you might have noticed that in the past few weeks we have had a challenge here and there with our power. Right? So one of us, they came to us and told us that they wanted to offer us a solar solution. Before we could say, they brought solar panels, installed them, put in an inverter, put in a 10 kVA converter, such that within no time, when that will have gained enough power, we are actually going to be able to supply this compound with power, all as a gift to the congregation. What a blessing, amen? And what a gift to us as a congregation, and really want to appreciate. The desire is to give, for them is to give without mention, and so I'm really trying my best to honor that particular desire in that way, but also to inform us that the same has happened in this particular compound. Please stand up. Turn to your neighbor. Tell them one deep word you have learned today, plus also one lesson that you are taking home. Ashas bado musiende. Ken, sitaki mkuwe na haraka. Kaeni tu hapa mko. Tell them you have learned about family. You've learned about Jesus. Yes. All right, let us pray. Heavenly Father, again, it's the desire of our hearts to continue worshiping you. We thank you for what we have learned, and we want to believe that, Lord God, you are helping us to form solid families. For those of us who have them, we continue asking for your healing power, even as we are restored and reconciled and strengthened in the pillars of what family is and what family should look like, even in God's eyes. For those of us who are desiring walking that journey, I pray that, Lord God, you'd help us to even have a good foundational knowledge and a good foundational walk, even as we prepare for it and as we go towards it, for the glory and honor of your name. We thank you for our panelists and the way they have ministered to us, and we pray that you'd continue refreshing them, even as you have refreshed us today. We thank you for the giving of your people, even as we have given today, and even as we have received in other ways, as we have mentioned here. We want to pray that, Lord God, you'll bless the gifts that have been given, and even the givers. Would you help us to continually be a generous church, even as we bless one another with what God has given us. We thank you for the week that is upcoming. Here in church, we are going to be busy with the children, with the trainings, and we pray that, Lord God, you'd minister to us even as we do that. But even as we go out into our homes, into our work, into our business, into all what you give us into our hands to do, may you make us prosperous and the heads and not the tails. May we be successful in what we do, even as the Lord leads us. We pray this blessing over each one of us in Jesus' name. And everyone says, tell your neighbor seriously, and now may the grace. Tell your neighbor, in the fellowship of the Holy. Wambia with violence, surely. Go with the mercy of our God.